Nutrients for digestion. It's important to have a balanced diet, and a balanced diet includes carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and of course, importantly, water. The processing and the absorption of the nutrients, we break down the physical structure of food, we disassemble the components and the molecules, and these molecules are released into the bloodstream, and they're absorbed by the cells, they're broken down to provide energy for ATP synthesis. Remember, that was the adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy source that the body uses, or used to synthesize carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. Some of the digestive enzymes, as we know, are secreted by the salivary glands, the tongue, the stomach, and the pancreas. And it breaks down the molecular bonds in the large organic molecules. So large organic molecules like carbohydrate, protein, and lipids, and nucleic acids, and in a process called hydrolysis, which must happen in the presence of water, hydro. And they're divided into classes. So you've got carbohydrates, which breaks down the bond into simple sugars, protease, which breaks down the bond between amino acids, and lipase, which separates fatty acids from the glycerides. The digestive enzymes, so the brush border enzymes include nucleotides, they break down the nucleotides into the simple sugars, the phosphates, and the nitrogen bases. Here we go again with talking about osmosis, so we need to have that good grip. So remember, that is the movement of water, but cells cannot actively absorb or secrete water. So the only way that water will move across the digestive linings is across osmotic gradients. So it only involves passive water flow down osmotic gradients, moving from low to high. So water will move from a low concentration gradient of a solute to a high concentration of a solute. So if we look a little more closely at water consumption, like we did in a couple of lectures ago, we've got direct dietary input of about 2 litres. We've got salivary secretions of about 1.5 litres. We've got more gastric secretions of about 1.5 litres, and that adds up to, so currently in the gut, in the stomach, we've got about 5 litres of fluid that will be moving through. Bile contributed from the liver is about another litre. Pancreatic juices can contribute up to a litre. And then we've got all of that fluid, so we've got about 7,000 to 9,000 mils of fluid moving through the intestinal tract. So that's a lot of fluid. So most of it will be reabsorbed out, so through the colon, and it's reabsorbed until we're actually only losing about 150 mils, which is lost in feces. Other fluid is lost via the renal system, but we haven't covered that yet. So we're talking about ion absorption. Remember, ions are the charged molecules. Osmosis doesn't distinguish amongst solutes. It's determined only by the total concentration of solutes. So to maintain homeostasis, the concentration of specific ions must be regulated. So one of the important ions in the body, of course, is sodium. Remember, that is Na with a plus sign above it. So sodium ion absorption, and the rate is increased by the hormone called aldosterone, which is a steroid hormone which is secreted from the adrenal cortex, which sits on top of the kidneys. Calcium ion absorption, another important ion involved in muscle contraction, involves active transport at the epithelial surface, and its rate is increased by the parathyroid hormone. So the parathyroid sits just up at your neck level, and calciferol. Potassium ion concentration increases as other solutes move out of the lumen, and then other ions diffuse into the epithelial cells along the concentration gradient. Cation absorption, which is like magnesium and iron, these are positively charged ions, involves specific carrier proteins. So the cells must use ATP, which is energy, to transport these ions into the interstitial fluid. So anions, which are the negatively charged ions like chlorine, iodine, bicarbonate and nitrate are absorbed by diffusion or carrier-mediated transport. Phosphate and sulfate ions enter the epithelial cells by active transport. So you can see, depending upon the ion, how they move in and out of the cell membrane, whether they can move down the concentration gradient passively, or whether they require ATP to be moved actively into the cell membrane. Vitamins, as we've mentioned before, are organic compounds and are required in very small quantities and are divided into two main groups. So you've got your fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E and K, and your water-soluble vitamins, the B and the C group. And of course the B comes with a complex, which is B1, B2 niacin, B6, B12 and folacin.